We need power, right? We're not, no matter if people have a vision of some purity where we're, dealing with birch bark fires, it's not going to happen. So how do you deal with that responsibility to solve a problem? How do you take practical matters into effect?
Bottom line for me, it does not matter whether you can replace those megawatts now or not. Public health and safety is all that matters. And the day that you wake up and you say, you know what, you're really screwing this up and I don't like what you're doing right now, that is the day that all the congressionals and those of us who government has a responsibility has to say, I don't care if we have to borrow, whatever we have to do, it has to be closed down.
Folks have been less willing to negotiate, less willing to trade off, less willing to say, I'm going to give a little this time around and then you'll give a little next time around, and work to create pragmatic solutions to better our environment, to better our country, to better our legislative process. Unfortunately, what we're seeing basically over the last decade is a retrenchment to an extremist position on a variety of topics, and people come to the table unwilling to budge.
Now in our discussions with them, we've proposed adding an enhanced screening mechanism that'll reduce our impacts on Hudson River fish, even though we haven't seen any impacts on Hudson River fish populations.
Well, Riverkeeper continues to believe that a closed cycle cooling system, a closed loop system, is the best answer to stop the environmental degradation that Indian Point causes. The issue is currently in litigation, and so we're working with our experts, and Entergy is putting forth their experts. So, it's an ongoing debate.
Getting something accomplished becomes the bottom line. Are you interested in that, or are you interested in grandstanding? And it's a very important distinction, and it's especially, I think, important for folks on college campuses and every place else to understand. If you're interested only in advocacy, at some point you're going to be in contrast to actually the problem-solving process of government itself. And it's a question of, do you view all this as a preamble to governing, to actually solving a problem? In which case you can stake out a strong position, feel passionately about it, but you're trying to figure out how to think bigger about a larger solution. Or are you an absolutist? Do you believe it's either all or nothing, my way or the highway?
I think it's important that we're able to, or that we would offer, compromises, or would negotiate, we'd be willing to settle on a compromise. So I think Entergy has always shown us willingness to do that.
It's just not a proven technology that could reach the same level of reduction in environmental impacts that a closed loop system could achieve.
I mean, dealing with power plants is a very difficult issue. There's so many levels of governance that you have to deal with. One of the concerns that I have with environmentalists is that while I'm not opposed to the idea of protecting the environment on a personal level, as someone who's studied these sorts of people before, environmental groups, again, while their aims are very, very noble, tend to take very extremist positions. The idea is to say, we need to work in an marketplace and recognize that you need to balance and you need to be willing to trade off and realize that you're not going to get everything you want. First
step is you can't demonize people you disagree with. You need to figure out a way to disagree agreeably. To say, look, as Jon Stewart recently said in his Restore Sanity rally, which I love, I really disagree with you, but I'm pretty sure you're not Hitler. It's a good place to start. And we've forgotten that a little bit in our debate. People are pretty quick to demonize the people they disagree with. And once you do that, it's incredibly difficult to sit across the table with them in good faith.
No, there's no personality clashes. It's handled in a professional manner, but from a legal perspective, they have an army of attorneys that are very aggressive in their approach. So in that way, it is certainly adversarial.
I think the discourse between us isn't always good, and I think ultimately, in order for Riverkeeper to really impact us, they have to generate controversy. There's no way to get attention otherwise.
If there is another act of terrorism anywhere, and it could be on a completely different area, if there was a dirty bomb in New York City, which would do, be very devastating, fear factor would be enormous, do devastating things, I will tell you that my calls on Indian Point would go up enormously. But if it's not in the foreground, most people, it really goes into their background.
You also try to figure out how you can answer people's concerns in a reasonable way. And maybe it's even bigger picture.
Say, look, I may not get everything I want this time, and I realize that I'm going to have to give a little, and I might get a little down the road as well, is something that I think these groups need to take to heart when thinking about negotiating and coming to the table.
Because we got a real financial problem in our state, like a lot of states right now. So we should be thinking entrepreneurially about this. But we need to be thinking comprehensively. We need to be thinking in terms of an all-the-above approach. We need to be thinking about long-term solutions that are ultimately renewable. And nuclear power can be part of that. And the fact is, it is more environmentally safe than many of the alternatives. And it's more geopolitically independent, certainly, than an addiction to foreign oil. But as long as there's reasonable regulation, community involvement, and we don't let the people who are totally self-interested on one side or the other determine the terms of the debate, I think it can be part of the solution for our country going forward, but only part of it.
I would encourage advocates and antagonists of this power plant to probably work a little harder to get this message out as clearly as they possibly can. Energy policy is hugely important and something I think we in this country take for granted.
Alright, for the records, can you guys state your names?
Robot name or real name?
It doesn't matter.
Hey, look, now that we have the internet, there's no excuse for not knowing. You can't just say evolution.
Hey, I'm
that's
not
just
really
a
sure
theory.
how magnets work.
Gravity. That's
I'm gonna
just a
chalk
theory.
it up to-
How am I supposed to know any about it? You know? Let me Google that for you. Okay.